Our business model is you are sitting in your house in Boise, Idaho. You graduated college, you're trying to figure out what to do, you want to learn real estate, and you don't have a tremendous amount of capital, and you have absolutely no real estate experience to start with. So what do? You can go to the internet, you can go buy programs, you can go work for somebody that's been doing it, you could go become a broker, or you could try and do it just on your own with not learning anything and not shadowing, mentoring, or buying any program, which is unfortunately how I did it. I'm so freaking old, there was no internet. Ha ha ha. So we had to actually read books, or you had to try and go get around people that were doing it. And both were hard to do in terms of you had to go find somebody that would invest in you or your time, which was hard, which generally means you had to work or get a job, and those were hard to get in real estate, because most real estate is entrepreneurs. So we have created a program that can start you from square one of getting into real estate. And the easiest way to get into real estate is by finding opportunity in the business. And what do I mean by finding opportunity? There's opportunity in every single square mile in any city in the United States. So part of what you have to do is decide, what am I going to go look for? So when we say look for, that means you have to determine, are you going to go find single-family homes? Are you going to go find fixers? Are you going to try and find apartment buildings? Are you going to try and find warehouses? Are you going to farm land? And you have to look in your general area and determine, is there a shortage of any property type in this area? So let's say you're living in Boise, Idaho. What would there be a shortage in Boise, Idaho? So understand now you can go to Google, you can pull up reports, you can see vacancy rates, you can see sales, you can see inventory of any product class. So we generally recommend that people start out in the single family class. And the reason we do that is the single family class, there could be in a square mile, let's just say 1,000 homes, okay? 1,000 homes in a square mile in any city, that is a high number of targets. So that gives you a good target-rich environment. If you suddenly wanted to go look for 2 to 4 unit apartment buildings or a 50-unit apartment building, there might only be a few apartments on one street, and there might be a dabbling of a few duplex, triplex, fourplexes within that city block. So instead of having 1,000 targets, you might only have 10 targets for an apartment building of 2 to 4 size, and there might be 3 larger apartments. So when we're teaching real estate, you're going to find supply and demand. Most people in this business are looking for sellers because there is an abundance of buyers for any reasonably good transaction or property that's available. So first step you need to do is go determine which property type you'd like to work in. We recommend single family one because there's a whole lot more targets, and you're dealing with interpersonal, calling the owner, trying to get in front of the owner, versus apartment buildings or commercial buildings may have gatekeepers, attorneys, property managers, people that are going to block you from talking directly to an owner. So in this scenario, we're going to teach you how to go farm, we call it farm, an area. So you're going to either pick a zip code, 98111, or whatever your zip code is in Idaho, and at that point, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to farm this neighborhood. Step number 1, pick an area, pick a property type. With me there? Step number 2 is, now you've got to figure out how are you going to reach out and see if there's any opportunity in that grid. So I will tell you, if I was going to do this grid, and this is my old school method, I would literally get in the car, it's called driving for dollars, and you drive up and down the street looking for addresses of properties that look vacant, for rent, tired, maybe sitting on a double lot, something that says there's potential there to perhaps contact the owner and see if they'd be interested in selling the property. You can do this by Google Earth View, but I find it works better when you're actually on the street, when you're going up and down, and you'll notice things that Google Earth won't show you. So in that scenario, I would get in the car, I'd drive up and down, I'd write down apartment buildings that look tired, I'd write down addresses of properties that had a for rent sign on it with the little scribbled home number on it. I would look for fixers, something that's dilapidated. The good thing we used to look for on any top of any house was the old TV antenna. You remember that, George? Yeah, you're too young. You don't know. Houses with TV antennas, that generally means someone over 60 is probably still living there. Okay? So in that scenario, we have to determine, are we going to drive for dollars, meaning we're going to write addresses? Are we going to go to some data source and pull all of these owners and see at that point, we're going to get their data? And we'll teach you all this in detail through other chapters. We're going to go through this in very detail. This is an overview of how you get started. At that point, you're going through the data and you're sorting the data. Now, do we want to contact people that just bought a house a year ago? No. Probably not, without question. That's not a target. So we're generally looking for properties that have not traded in a set period of time. That period of time can vary by your community or how often things sell in your area. We would generally go look to see if a house hasn't sold in the last 10 years. Could be longer, but at least 10 years. So that means they probably have some high equity and they may have low debt on the property. Once we have that data source, now we have to determine how are we going to contact them. Are we going to send them a postcard? Are we going to send them an offer? Are we going to cold call them? Are we going to knock on the door? Okay? Door knocking for investment properties is probably not the best approach because you're going to somebody's house that owns a business asking them if they'll sell the business. So we don't recommend door knocking for investment property. You could call them, you could text them, you could email them, you could send them a mailer. All are trying to generate a positive response. Okay? So once we get a positive response, we will then, through another chapter, teach you what to do when that positive response happens. But the goal is to get you to start opening your eyes that there are opportunities within every zip code or block within any city. If you went and looked at 1,000 properties, I guarantee at a minimum you could find 10 properties that would probably trade in the next year. So step one is learning what to identify and what to fish in your real estate business. Because it does you no good to go look and find properties if you don't know what to do with them, how to negotiate, how to offer. But you can obviously have, with very short period of time and training, the ability to learn to what to look for, which is what we're going to teach you in chapter 1. What type of properties to consider buying and what to look for when you're sorting through data or when you're driving through dollars or when you're looking through a property. So let's close on that right now. This is our intro to learning how to acquire off-market properties to get started in real estate with no money and no experience.